Cuttingsville in the town of Shrewsbury on this glorious Saturday morning. I'm here to welcome you on behalf of the Laurel Glen Cemetery Association of 1894 and the Shrewsbury Historical Society. A quick overview of what we're going to do this morning. We have a few remarks we're going to make here, followed by the unveiling of Vermont's newest roadside historic marker. We will then open the doors of Laurel Hall behind me so that folks who want to take a tour can do so, and you're also invited to visit the conservatory and the mausoleum across Route 103. And just down to my left is the Shrewsbury Historical Society Museum, which is also open. They have a cider and donuts there, and perhaps most important, porta potties, because there is no running water in this building. So we certainly invite you to go down there as well before you leave Cuttingsville. We're here on account of John Porter Bowman, and I want to tell you a bit about him. He was born in 1816, about 3 miles that way, in his grandparents' tavern. They had a tavern there during the Revolutionary War, and Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys favored them. He apprenticed in the tannery trade, first in Rutland and then in New York, and then came to Cuttingsville. He was here in 1851. He was 35 years old, and he had a tannery 2 miles down the road that way. He was well respected, in fact, so well respected that the citizens of the town of Shrewsbury elected him to be their representative to the General Assembly. So he was in quite a good position, but it wasn't good enough for Mr. Bowman because he was a businessman and he wanted to expand his tannery business, and he thought the best way to do that was to move to the Adirondacks. So he bought an unfinished tannery in a little town called Stony Creek, New York, and moved over there and built a company town there. Not so long ago, we were at a marker dedication ceremony for Edward Hastings Ripley from Rutland, who some of you certainly know about. He was a Union Army Brigade commander, and we're pleased today to have Commander Dan Seelick and some others from the Ripley Camp Number 4 Civil War group that's here. Ripley and Bowman were contemporaries. They were of the same era. Ripley fought in the war. He was a leader. Bowman also contributed to the war effort by contributing leather goods. He supplied the boots, the saddles, the bridles and such that allowed the Union Army to fight and win that war. So he contributed to the war effort in his own way. He was a tremendously successful businessman. He had made a fortune, but in other ways his life had tragedy in it. And in 1879, his daughter Ella died. She was just 22 years old. And he was heartbroken. He and his wife had a child some years earlier, but she had also died at 4 months old. So he suddenly had no children. And then within 6 months, his wife, Jenny, died. So he was a heartbroken man, and he resolved to build a great marker and mausoleum and memorial for them. And he talked to the folks here in town of Shrewsbury and Cuttingsville, and it was agreed that he could put his mausoleum up across the way near the old cemetery. He commissioned a noted New York architect, G.B. Croft, to design the mausoleum across the way, as well as the other buildings on this property. And he also commissioned a famous New York sculptor by the name of Giovanni Torrini, who sculpted that larger-than-life statue of Bowman you see across the way in grief, mourning the loss of his family. The first summer after that mausoleum was built and completed and the remains were placed there, more than 10,000 visitors came here to visit that mausoleum. There was a doorman at the door and a guest book to sign inside. After completing the mausoleum, Bowman had Croft build this residence behind me, where he could stay and visit his relatives. Bowman had named the cemetery across the way Laurel Glen. the laurel being an ancient symbol of wealth, prosperity, and eternal glory. And he named this magnificent mansion behind me Laurel Hall. Some know it as the Haunted Mansion, and we may talk about that later this morning. This mansion is probably one of Croft's greatest works, built in the Queen Anne style with East Lake and stick style influence. And the conservatory across the way, the carriage house to my right, and the caretaker's house across from that completed the complex. Now, John Bowman died in 1891. He left in his will left this property in trust, and he asked the Vermont legislature to create a corporation to maintain the property in perpetuity. The General Assembly complied, creating the Laurel Glen Cemetery Association of 1894, which has managed the property ever since. Perpetuity is a long time. Bowman left $50,000 in his will for the maintenance of the property, and that was adequate back in the 19th century. The mansion had servants that set the dining room table every evening, just in case Mr. Bowman and his family returned for dinner. And there was a groundskeeper across the way to maintain the cemetery and grow flowers for the cemetery and the conservatory. However, that modest endowment left 130 years ago is sadly no longer adequate to cover the maintenance that this wonderful property deserves. Our current trustees want it to be open, we want it to be enjoyed and to benefit our community. We are searching for ideas about how this property can be used to benefit the community and how we can raise funds to maintain and use it. The Preservation Trust of Vermont has been a great partner in this search, as well as others. Today, we're here to celebrate this property and its historic significance. Please, when we get done, tour the grounds, enjoy its beauty, and we will endeavor in the months ahead to keep you and the community informed of our efforts to save this property. We'll welcome whatever ideas and assistance you can provide us in those efforts. And having said that, I'd like to invite Alex Tolstoy of the Preservation Trust of Vermont to say a few words. Alex?
Thank you all. My name is Alex Tolstoy. I work for the Preservation Trust of Vermont, which is a statewide nonprofit that works to preserve the cultural landscape of our great state. Sorry. I was asked to come here to speak a little bit about the history of the building. And I could speak at length about East Lake style or Egyptian revival style or even the eccentric architect that designed these buildings. But I think most importantly, the design of these buildings reflected its original owner. Both the hall and the mausoleum are in the romantic style, and I think Mr. Bowman certainly was a romantic. He believed in eternal love, he believed in the afterlife, he believed in spirits. And I think he also believed in the future of our state and the future of our community, this community. And he made assurances that this building would be saved and preserved in perpetuity, to continue to be enjoyed by the community. But his assurances only really went so far, right? And we're here to dedicate this marker today that talks about the history of the building and the architect. But I think it doesn't quite mention the second part of the story, this long history of community members and local stewards that have cared for this building, tirelessly working to preserve it, maintain it, and ensure that it is and will be part of the community. And I think it's groups like this board, and communities like this, that are as responsible for these buildings as Mr. Bowman or Mr. Croft, the architect. And it's groups like this and communities like yours and buildings like these that help preserve that sense of romanticism that Mr. Bowman was so interested in, and that make this state so great and communities like this so great. So I want to thank this community and this board for their tireless work and ask that they please do continue to work so hard, because these buildings are so incredible and they are an intricate part of what makes our community so special. So thank you again, and thank you for inviting me.
For being here this morning. This is an exciting time. it's always exciting when there's a marker that shows some of our Vermont history. And it's especially exciting when it's in Rutland County. And this is an interesting marker for me because I remember as a little girl riding down Route 103 and seeing that mausoleum and closing my eyes because it was a little creepy with that big statue there and knowing what it was. As I got older and realized what the significance was of the dedication to love and loss that Mr. Bauman was creating here, I had a different feeling. I felt sad and sorry for his loss. And today, I'm thinking about Marjorie Pierce's article that's on the website talking about the mausoleum and the house and realizing how much it added to the economy of this area with 125 people being able to work for a year or more as the sculpture and the mausoleum were created, and then the mansion was established and built. And it strikes me how art and beauty add to the economy of an area. So Mr. Bauman was important to this area as a business person. He left his mark. He also left this visible legacy that all of us can enjoy. And as Barry said, the first year 10,000 visitors came to see the mausoleum. We're hoping that with the refurbishing of this mansion, there will be more visitors who come and enjoy the beauty and the art that goes back so far and tells a lot about our history. So thank you for having me, and enjoy the day.
Good morning and welcome. It's my honor to be part of the Roadside Historic Site Marker dedication ceremony on behalf of the state of Vermont. Events such as this are special because we get to highlight important people and stories that are significant to Vermont's history, but also that need to be recognized as part of our nation's heritage, stories that are often not told. The Roadside Historic Site Marker Program has been a tool for teaching our history since 1947, when it was established by the Vermont legislature. It is one of the state's smallest programs, and I believe it has one of the farthest reaches, as we now are about to install our 300th roadside historic site marker. We even have one gracing a roadside in Middletown, Virginia, to honor Vermonters' efforts at the Battle of Cedar Creek during the Civil War. So they do have a very far reach. These 3-foot signs of cast aluminum, crammed with 765 characters on each side, and I challenge you to write a history in just 765 characters, provide a glimpse into the lives of noteworthy and inspiring Vermonters, the places where their history happened, and recognize their struggles and triumphs. It is most fitting that John Porter Bowman's contribution to our architectural and funerary landscape heritage be recognized. Laurel Hall, an opulent summer home, was constructed in 1882 intentionally across from the Laurel Glen Mausoleum, where his family was reinterred. Bowman's story, his success, his heartache are conveyed by the high-style house and the mausoleum, and now the placement of this roadside historic site marker. That story can be expressed more readily and bring more deserved recognition to this place. This is the 74th year of this roadside historic site marker program, and this is the 290th marker to be installed and dedicated. I want to give special thank you to the Laurel Glen Cemetery Association of 1894, the board members and trustees for submitting the application and working with me on editing. I also want to thank the Select Board and the Shrewsbury Historical Society. And special thanks to Alex Tolstoy for delivering it and for those who assisted him in installing the marker, which weighs about 175 pounds and is sitting on a 12-foot pole. So it's not an easy endeavor. I also wish to thank the staff of the Division for Historic Preservation, which really strives hard to operate this program, and the Vermont Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, that is the governing body that approves all the markers, and of course the Vermont Legislature and the administration, which continuously fund this program. It is my honor on behalf of the state of Vermont, Governor Phil Scott, to present the John Porter Bowman Laurel Hall and Laurel Glen Mausoleum Roadside Historic Site Marker. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you very much. That's quite an act. Thank you very much.